All right, it's an honor to be here with you today. Thanks for having us. So we find ourselves at an incredible moment in the history of medicine, and few generations of healthcare professionals ever get a chance to witness a true transformation in the way we practice medicine. So I think this is one of those defining moments in medicine right now, and it's very exciting. But with change comes uncertainty, skepticism, and there should be. We shouldn't really accept innovation blindly without questioning. And this is a real expectation. And all of us here today have a responsibility to educate ourselves and each other on the most important part of the healthcare team, and that's the patient. But who are our patients? Behind every chart is a human being. And I'm going to read this one more time. Behind every chart is a human being. So I'm going to encourage you to never forget this. It's extremely important. I believe this is probably the most important slide here today. But let's talk about our patients. They're not strangers. They're parents, ours or someone else's. They're spouses, children, friends, colleagues, the person sitting next to you. And eventually all of us will be patients. So knowledge is power. Again, I'm going to encourage you to stay informed, to understand the evidence, and to learn how to separate the headline hype from what's going to make a difference. And when I say make a difference, I mean what's going to improve patient care. That's ultimately what we need to do. So beyond the headlines, something incredible is going on. So I'm going to take you into the patient into the clinic, and the primary care doctor, who now with ambient listening can have the tools doing the notes for the doctors, so we can sit there and go back to the way we used to practice face to face and be able to interact, have that eye contact, and not be on the computer the whole time. AI can also improve the workflows and earlier disease detection, which we'll talk about in a little while, and also helping to expand access to care. But keeping in mind that the clinicians now are an integral part of the healthcare team, and the physicians are still going to have the responsibility for the critical decision making. So the way we see it is AI is not replacing us, it's just going to empower all of us on various levels. So history reminds us that many of the great inventions have been met with opposition. So just take the stethoscope, for instance, 1800s, this thing is developed. But the way they used to listen to the lungs and the heart, ear to the chest. And they thought that that was trust and that it was better for the patients because it was more supportive, more personal. So believe it or not, they did not welcome the stethoscope because of that, but eventually was accepted. Anesthesia, the fear of being put to sleep. X-rays, the fear of the radiation. Minimally invasive surgery, all of these were met with opposition, and you could imagine the ethics involved with organ transplant and misinformation with the internet. Well, eventually, with balance, pros and cons, risks and benefits, all of these were accepted into the healthcare of the time. And I want to mention balance because now at this point with AI, we're tipping the scales a little bit. So let me give you my vision of that. So the weight is down here. So we have human intelligence in AI. And what's happening here? AI comes on the scene. Everybody's enthusiastic about it, and it's great. And everybody is thinking about this now. It's great. It's ubiquitous now in healthcare. But then the weight is going to the other side. And then we have to worry about trust and ethics and the biases, and how do we get around that? Is it safe? What's it about? How does it work? The transparency, and who's going to be accountable? So in order to put these all together, this is my vision for the future, is that we can have it balanced. And it's not always going to be perfect like this, so I would like us to be able to move forward with responsibility. So we can't have the safeguards so high that we stifle innovation. We need to have innovation. We need to try things. We need to move forward, but we always have to have this balance. So my wish for the future is moving forward with responsibility and with cautious optimism. Humans aren't perfect, and neither is AI. We shouldn't hold AI to that standard. But together, we can create endless possibilities. So this was just a little bit about our vision. What I'd like to do now is take you through some of the literature. So I want you to be responsible to learn and to be able to distinguish the headline hype from what's real. How will you know what's real? I'd like to show you some papers and show you the evidence and maybe a little bit on how to look at the papers to see, is it good? Can't just read a conclusion and have maybe a pharmaceutical company who's sponsoring that study say, this is great, change your practice. You can't do that. You have to be able to go through the literature and know how to read it to see if this is something I should accept into my own practice to help my patient because the data is worth it. So now I'll just tell you that we have no financial relationships. We are the American College of Artificial Intelligence, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and this talk was developed independently without any commercial influence. So let's look at the data. So as of May 2026, FDA cleared many tools, AI devices, over 1,300, and 75% of them are approved for radiology. Recent survey by the American College of Radiology found that 2/3 of radiology departments are actually using AI. And healthcare systems even created a position called the Chief AI Officer, which is a position to guide the implementation of AI in their health systems. So there's two ways that AI can help our patients. There's CNN, convolutional neural networks. This is all about imaging. So the x-rays, the CT scans, colonoscopy, mammography, retinal images, EKG, etc. The other is the LLMs, which are the large language models, your ChatGPT, ambient listening, agentic AI. AI being used for prior authorization, portal messages in the clinics. So let's start with convolutional neural networks, AI and oculomics. What's oculomics? Well, it's AI seeing patterns on fundus images. It's also using OCT, which is optical coherence tomography. So that's like an ultrasound of the eye, but instead of using sound waves, it's using light waves. So this is an image of a retina, and these are some of the things that we can now see. Diabetes, high blood pressure, kidney disease, your coronary calcium score, predicting heart attacks, hyperlipidemia, predicting Parkinson's disease 7 years before we would be able to diagnose that. Predicting strokes, atherosclerosis, and just as of a few weeks ago, a few things were added, and that's osteoporosis, thyroid disease, and even gout. So isn't this incredible that we're able to do something like this? Could you imagine in a primary care office being able to look at a retinal image and see all of these? To be able to see all of this all at once, it's not deployed yet, but maybe for the future. So let's look at an EKG. What can a human see on an EKG? We all know the rate rhythm excess, the ischemia, hypertrophy, and electrolyte imbalances. But what happens when we add AI to looking at an EKG? Now we can see the ejection fraction instead of using an echocardiogram. The development of AFib, not diagnosing the AFib, but seeing it before it even happens. Diagnosing diabetes, anemia, hypothyroidism, and chronic kidney disease. This is amazing stuff. So now let's change to AI and population health. So screening, this is how we're going to keep our patients healthier. So I'd like to go over some of the cancer screenings. So for colon, pancreatic, breast, and lung cancer, and show you some of the literature. There's a lot of literature out there, and it's not all great. So I want to show you some of them that are very promising. So let's start with this. This is in Annals of Internal Medicine, and it's AI-assisted colonoscopy for polyp detection. So let's see what this one shows. So for a question like, does AI-assisted colonoscopy improve polyp detection? Well, the best way to look at the studies is look for a randomized controlled trial. This is the highest level of evidence. So this study not only uses one, but it's a systematic review that used 43 randomized controlled trials, over 34,000 cases. So robust literature here. It's comparing conventional colonoscopy with the CATE system, which is computer-aided detection system. So there's a human involved, but it's using AI versus not AI with the endoscopist. So what do you think, good or bad? Must be good or I wouldn't be showing it. So the key outcomes, we're looking at adenoma detection rate and adenoma miss rate. So let's see what happens here. So for the detection rate, it increased the detection rate by 20% using AI-assisted colonoscopy, and that's significant. Even more significant is the adenoma miss rate. Now, it may seem like these are the same, detection and miss rate, but statistically speaking, it's different. We can talk about that later. But the adenoma miss rate, the standard way, miss rate is 35%. With AI, 16%. So it's about 1 in 3 polyps that may be missed by an endoscopist without AI. Using AI, 53% reduction of missed adenomas, 53% reduction. That's amazing. So when I'm ready for my colonoscopy, I'm definitely going to have AI involved. Okay, next let's talk about AI and pancreatic cancer. So this is a study from Gut Journal of 2026. And it's using AI to attempt to find occult pancreatic cancer. So let's see what this shows. So pancreatic cancer, you probably know, 85% diagnosed at a very advanced stage. So in this study, they developed a tool called Redmond, and it's radiomics-based early detection model. I'll explain radiomics in just a minute. It's called Redmond, and it's a machine learning ensemble model. It's a retrospective multi-institutional. So this is a buzzword that you want to look at in the literature, that it's multi-institutional. Obviously, it's larger, a little bit more credible. And it's evaluating pre-diagnostic CT scans. So it's taking CT scans of known pancreatic cancer here and taking the previous scans that people may have in their charts already for other reasons. Scans are done for a lot of reasons. So they're there. They have them in the charts, and hence the term opportunistic. It's taking the opportunity of previous scans without having to do anything, put AI on that, and see if it can detect pancreatic cancer without even knowing that over here, there's cancer. So it doesn't know, and so it's looking to see if it can find cancer before it developed. So this, a little hazy, I'm sorry, but this is the ensemble model. So it's taking 3 AI tools, logistic regression, random forest, XGBoost, to create this ensemble model. So it's kind of taking the best of these to create its own model. So the study goals were to see if it can detect this occult pancreatic cancer to look and see if they can detect it before and knowing that it's already diagnosed later. So it's using this Redmond AI against radiologists. So it demonstrated external multi-institutional validation. So that's something you want to look for in a study. It did surpass the radiologists from detecting the pancreatic cancer. But I see this as an uneven playing field, because what radiomics, that's the R in Redmond, it's looking at images and transferring it into mathematical and numerical patterns. From those patterns, that's able to predict the cancer. We can't see that. I can't see that. You can't see that. So neither can the radiologist. So it's not an even playing field. So yeah, it was better, but we don't have the tool in our eyes to see this. But this is pretty incredible that it does. So Redmond can detect cancer 1.3 years before the clinical diagnosis. So that's what they found when they went back and looked at the opportunistic scans that were already in the chart to find this earlier. And I think this is absolutely amazing. So just looking at some of the stats here, let's look at the sensitivity. So 73% sensitivity for finding the disease versus the radiologist at 38%. So p-value, anything that's less than 0.05 is a very good study. So you can see the number here, 0.001. So sensitivity is really high. So here for the specificity for ruling out the disease, this is really good in the study, multi-institutional and public data sets. So a lot of data that it actually looked at, and it came up with 81 and 87% respectively for a negative diagnosis, which was true when you looked at the final scans. So very good study. Now in 2023, the same authors, similar authors, actually started working on this, and they took it to a level of proof of concept and internal validation. And in 26, they created this Redmond model with external validation, so it's getting better. But what's missing now, this is as far as it's gone so far, For the future now, to know if we can actually do something like this, we need a little bit more data and we need prospective studies. What are we going to do with this? How do we integrate this into our workflow? So this is what we still need, and then we need patient outcomes. So this is the way the study, they started in 23, we have 26, but we still have a little, or they still have a little more work to do before we can deploy something like this, but really promising. So next I want to tell you about daraxonrasib that I had to practice how to say. And it's for treating advanced pancreatic cancer. Now this study is just about the drug. It's not AI, but I want to tie this into what I just told you about early detection of pancreatic cancer. This is from New England Journal of Medicine, 2026. And it was actually May 7th that this came out. And this is kind of groundbreaking because it's the first oral medication that we have for pancreatic cancer. Now, I told you about the diagnosis, and it's always advanced, it's always diagnosed at an advanced stage. So they looked at a RAS protein. RAS is like a light switch, turns the cell on and off. Well, with cancer, then it stays on. It's always in the on position. The cell's dividing, the tumor is growing. So this is the target for this drug. So over 90% of pancreatic cancers now are RAS mutations. And this particular medication now was targeting that. So let's see what happens here. So in the conventional treatment with chemotherapy, you have this progression-free survival, 2 to 3 months, overall survival 5 to 7 months. But now with daraxonrasib, we can increase the overall survival by 13 to 13.1 months. So it doesn't look like a big difference here, but this is incredible progress because we didn't have this before. Now this is at an advanced stage, and it's after they were already treated with 1 round of chemo. So imagine if we can take something like this, diagnose it earlier over here before it even happens, and then maybe implement the medication sooner. That hasn't been done yet, but I'm sure that's on the horizon. But imagine what we could do with this information. So limitless possibilities with AI. Very exciting stuff. Okay, next let's do AI in breast cancer. Let me show you a paper on this. So this is AI and mammography. And this is from Lancet of 2026. So mammography screening, they used what's called this MASSI trial. So it's mammography screening with AI. And it's widely regarded as the first large randomized controlled trial from Sweden. And in the UK, they have access to a lot of data. So this is an important study here with a lot of participants. So it's AI-supported mammography screening, demonstrated interval outcomes in the real-world population. So just a little, well, some of the things are off a bit, so I apologize for that. That wasn't like that before. Enrollment, they started in 21, and then they completed it in 2022. But they had to do follow-up, so it took a few years to wait for the next mammography screening. You do it at time 0 and then do it, they did it 2 years later. And then you have to go through peer review and then publication. So it takes a while to get some of the results. So the trial overview, it's pretty robust, 105,000 participants, that's really good. And it compared standard double reading versus AI-supported mammography screening. I'll explain the double reading in just a second, but the goals were to determine if AI can improve cancer detection. Can it reduce interval cancers? And can it reduce radiology workload? So let's see what happened here. So it had 2 arms. The whole time there's a human involved. So one arm is 2 radiologists, no AI. So traditionally in the UK, they do 2 readings anyway, not simultaneously, but there's 2 readings that will be done on a mammogram. And by doing this, that improves your cancer detection and decreases the missed cancers. The other arm is AI plus a radiologist. So it started with just AI looking at the scan and giving it a score of very low risk, intermediate, and high concern. So if it was low risk, it only required 1 radiologist to review it. So it was as if AI was maybe the first read and then 1 radiologist only. Anything over low risk, it just went to 2 radiologists. Moderate or high risk, 1 to 2 radiologists. So let's see what happened. So the number of interval cancers. So what's an interval cancer? They did the screening at time 0, and 2 years later is when you would have your follow-up. Well, if anything developed from time 0 to 2 years, that's the interval cancer. So how many developed when you had a negative scan? So in the AI group, AI and radiologists, we had 82 versus more in just the 2 radiologists, 93. Now these may seem like a high number, but keep in mind there was 105,000, so there's about 50,000 people in each group. So that number maybe isn't that high. So the sensitivity, how well did we detect disease? 80% in the AI group versus 73 in the radiology group. So look at our p-value, less than 0.05, 0.031. So very good study here. But something even more interesting, when you increase your sensitivity, what happens sometimes is that you detect more disease, but you may also have more false positives. So that would mean your specificity changes, and that would go down. But look what happened with the specificity here. Specificity is like negative disease, and it didn't change. It didn't change at all. So even though our sensitivity was increased, your false positive rate did not increase. So very good study. And one other perk here is that the number of screen readings by the radiologist went down by 44%. So if it was the low risk, then only 1 radiologist was needed. So it helped with the workflow. Let's look at AI and lung cancer. So this is a study from the Journal of American College of Radiology in 2026, and it's AI for lung cancer detection. Let's see. So it's an AI-assisted diagnostic augmentation study. So it was a decision support tool, not trying to replace the radiologist. And the end result was an increased sensitivity of 24%. And again, with the specificity, like I just mentioned, no change. So the false positive rate did not increase. So very, very significant results here. And overall, the study supported integrating AI into chest CT workflows for early lung cancer detection. So these are all very important papers. So let's look at opportunistic screening for coronary artery disease. Remember I mentioned opportunistic just a few minutes ago. So this is a study from New England Journal of Medicine, AI, in 2025 at VA hospitals using opportunistic CT scans and applying AI to see what we can find. So as I mentioned, CT scans are done for a lot of reasons. At the VA, probably everybody there had a CT scan in their records somewhere. So when you do a coronary calcium score, that's a gated score. A gated scan. So you have to use the still phase of the heart to do this. It's a little more labor intensive. The CAT scans that are done for most reasons when people go to the hospital, they're the non-gated ones. A little less labor intensive, and it's kind of like the routine ones that are done. So this study is taking advantage of those. So instead of using the gated, a little more labor intensive and more cost, because you're going to have to do another scan, they looked at the ones that were there already. And what they found was, well, they developed a deep learning algorithm to look at these and to look for coronary score. So again, it's taking advantage of the opportunistic angle. So we have a lot of data in people's history. So AI can go back and do amazing things with what's already there. So it was pretty much free risk screening because they were already done. No additional imaging with an accuracy of 87 to 89% to determine the coronary calcium score. Anything close to 90 is really good. So this is promising for taking advantage or the opportunity for data that already exists. So the opportunistic screening for coronary disease, we can do it on a chest CT. We can also find it on a head CT, on mammograms, and then as we saw on the retinal images as well. So I want to just talk about the smartwatches. In 2018, AFib was cleared by the FDA for notification features. September 2024, it approved obstructive sleep apnea, and then hypertension in 2025. So the Apple Watch and hypertension. So it's these hypertension notification features, and it will alert the user that they may have high blood pressure. It's not going to say for sure, and it's not diagnosing. It's going to alert you that you may have high blood pressure. So obviously it's not taking the blood pressure with a cuff, but it uses PPG, photoplasmography, and measures how light bounces off of the vessels. And then AI uses pattern recognition to help potentially diagnose hypertension. So this wearable data then can be shared with the physicians or integrated in remote patient monitoring programs. Now this is a study in JACC Journal Cardiology, and this is 2025, and using the Apple Watch for diagnosing atrial fibrillation. So EKG has usually been the gold standard for AFib, but this study was with about 4,000 participants with a mean age of 62. Anything with AFib, the age of the participants should be about in the 60s, because unfortunately as we get older, the increased likelihood of having atrial fibrillation. So if it's a younger population, it probably won't be a good study because they don't really get AFib. Sensitivity, great, 94%. Specificity rate, 95%. And area under the curve, anything close to 1 is great at 96%. So this is a really good study, robust for diagnosing AFib using the smartwatch. Next is sleep apnea. This is from Sleep and Breathing in 2025. And it's looking at can the smartwatch actually help to diagnose sleep apnea. So let's see. Before I tell you the results of this, just want to remind everybody of the morbidity associated with OSA. Hypertension, heart failure, atrial fibrillation, mood disorders, pulmonary hypertension is a big one. So it's a multi-system chronic disease risk amplifier. And I don't know if everybody realizes the importance of OSA and actually getting this treated. There's so many people that are undiagnosed. That haven't been tested or maybe have been tested and choose to not wear their CPAP. But it's very, very important disease. So what this shows is the smartwatches were used as a screening tool, and it used an electronic sensor called inertial measurement unit, and a machine learning model was applied to that to estimate sleep apnea. 100% sensitivity for all true positives. But this one was moderate to severe disease. And 90% specificity for ruling out disease with 10% false positives. So pretty good study. Pretty good study. So up until this point, we talked about our perspective on AI in medicine, and then tried to give you some of the important papers. And I want to continue to encourage you to learn and read the data, understand it before you try to implement all of this. And when you find good data, then we need to work to getting these things employed with the healthcare leaders. And I'll turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Dr. Schleisner. Thank you. Just the right. Sit there. It's really important.
So the main takeaway from today when you walk out of the room is that if you use AI in medicine, you'll improve the care of your patient. We're just demonstrating different ways that could be done. So there's two big pictures here. One is that AI can interpret images. And so Anne presented examples in the recent medical literature showing how a convolutional neural network can read an image, whether it's an X-ray, an EKG, an image of the eye, and with really good sensitivity, specificity, strong p-values, we've shown you trials where the performance of diagnosing disease earlier is significant, and that we really need to start incorporating this in our care of patients. But something really exciting happened at the end of 2022, which is the release of large language models. And this really changed the world in a way that is just incredible. And it's obviously not just affecting the medical world, it's affecting law, business, everything in our world is now altered because of large language models. So up until now, we demonstrated how we can use artificial intelligence in the form of the CNN to interpret images. And a big part of medicine is images. But the next frontier is the language part. So now there's many large language models that are available to everyone. These are some examples. The nice thing is that each one of these examples I'm showing you here, in 2026, the manufacturers of these tools are developing and releasing versions that are healthcare specific, both for patients to use but more importantly for physicians to use. So there's going to be available, just like anyone can use ChatGPT for free, there's going to be ChatGPT for clinicians and these other ones as well. We'll talk about soon to be available this year tools. So this is going to be a big part of medical decision making. When we survey medical students or resident physicians, we find that the vast majority are currently using open evidence. Now, open evidence is a ChatGPT, but it doesn't search the entire internet. Like if you use ChatGPT right now and do a search, it's searching the entire internet. Now you can imagine there are many things on the internet that aren't like scientifically proven. Like anyone can post something on the internet. So the academic medical community that Ann and I are part of has developed a way to take ChatGPT and search only the medical literature. For example, New England Journal of Medicine, we showed you some of those papers. So this particular tool that, again, is available for free to every physician has recently been found to be used 1 million times every single day in the US. 1 million times. So many people think, well, AI really hasn't been deployed in the medical world. Well, that actually isn't the case. As I speak to you right now, it's being used 1 million times a day for patient care decisions in an evidence-based way, which is what our whole mission is in the organization, is to teach physicians and anyone in healthcare how to use it in an evidence-based way, a safe, effective way that's going to improve patient care. Now, the main implementation of AI in medicine in the last year has been through something called ambient listening. Essentially, the visit, say in an office, if you go see a doctor right now, today, let's say after this talk you have an appointment with your primary care doctor, there's a high likelihood, more than 50% chance, that during that visit, your doctor is going to turn on something called ambient listening system. It's going to listen to that whole doctor-patient conversation and put it into the electronic medical record. How amazing is that? So this is not like fantasy or science fiction. This is happening every day in the majority of health systems in the US right now. Now, 1/3 of hospitals or clinics that do that are using this first product, the one in blue, and the other third are using the next one you see here in green. But there are many, many other companies, smaller companies that have very good products that do the same thing. But the important takeaway is that this is a way that we use large language models in medicine that's really fully implemented in the majority of health systems right now. But let's go back to just an everyday use by a student, a resident doctor, or an attending doctor that's part of the medical school here. How would they use it? So this paper in Science from just a few weeks ago, April 30th, is a collaboration between the Harvard Medical School faculty and the Stanford Medical School faculty. And it specifically looked at the large language model ChatGPT, and it compared the version that everyone has access to. At the time, that was GPT-4. Obviously, we're on to newer versions. Versus something that you may or may not know about, which is called the Thinking series. And the reason this is important for you all to understand is that the Thinking series is the one that more closely simulates how a physician thinks. And that will be the version that will be available when we talk about ChatGPT for clinicians. Hopefully you know this is the thinker Rodin, famous statue that we've seen live. We've been to this spot. I think it's important, to incorporate, the humanities into medicine. It's really, the whole humanism piece is enriched if you make that part of your experience. I hope you guys agree with that. But anyway, back to the O series and the thinking. It improved accuracy and improve medical decision making. So let's look at the data. So this is a really nice chart that compares physician 1, physician 2, these are without AI, a physician using ChatGPT, just the standard model that's available, or the thinking model. Well, not surprisingly, given that the thinking model more closely replicates how physicians think, that one really outperformed physician alone or just the standard. Now, we can look at specific scenarios. So the first scenario is just triaging someone when they're in the emergency room. That first moment they come in with a complaint, deciding the very first sense of what to do with them. So the thinking model, which is in purple here, had a really significant higher performance score compared to the others. Now, the next scenario is just the care in the emergency room. So now you went from the triage, let's say you're now a patient in the emergency room. If your doctor used the thinking model, it outperformed the doctor without using AI, or even just the doctor using standard GPT. This is important for me because up until recently, we were just using the standard version. That's what people had access to. But now we'll be using the thinking model because we want to have the best care for our patients. The last example that you can see, there wasn't really a significant difference, which is deciding once they've passed through the triage and through the emergency visit, do they go to the hospital or to the ICU? And Ann and I are hospital physicians, and our whole career we've been doing this. So you can see that that decision point really isn't affected as much by use of AI. But we're evidence-based. We want to teach physicians and everyone in healthcare how to use these tools in a meaningful way that will improve patient care. So I'm sure you're well aware that the Nature journal is one of the most reputable. This is NPJ Digital Medicine. This is from March of this year. From Tool to Teammate, a randomized trial. And pretty much everything Ann and I are showing you today are randomized trials with really great p-values. But this is showing clinician AI collaborative workflows. So again, this is a paper about ChatGPT, but we'll be showing you other models as well during this talk. But this NPJ Digital Medicine, physicians without AI got the correct diagnosis 75% of the time. I'll just tell you, if you look at the medical literature in general, this number keeps coming up. This is not like specific to this paper. This is just how physician performance is across the board. That's even true of specialists. But if you add AI to that same physician, the correct diagnosis was now 85% correct. And the p-value, 0.0003. So basically a 10% improvement in diagnostic performance if you have physician plus ChatGPT. Now, another large language model is called Gemini. That's the Google version. Now, if you just use Gemini alone, the performance may not be as good as if it were more specific. Like I'm showing you the standard version of what anyone can use and then a physician-specific version. So a lot of papers are coming out in the last 8 weeks on something called Amy. That's Google's Gemini that's built and trained for physicians. And the papers are super impressive, and they're being published in the most high-impact, rigorous journals. So I'll just show you a couple, but here's one that I really like from Nature Medicine. It's about large language models in cardiology. And in this study, they had 9 cardiologists. And in the trial, some did their usual care, which they could use whatever the tools they wanted to use. But then that versus the same thing with AI added. So they could look things up however they wanted to, but the only difference is whether AI was involved. So in this processing, like the way doctors think is they hear the history, they do their exam, but then they look at the EKG data, they look at the echo data, they look at whatever tests, labs were done, tests. So across the board, with and without AI interpreting. So as you might imagine, based on the theme of our talk today, those cardiologists that added this tool, Amy, which is a large language model trained specifically for healthcare, the performance was better. So cardiologists alone had more errors. So go back to my numbers before. The errors rate is essentially similar, whether we're talking about the colonoscopies or just general diagnosis or the cardiology care, but we can cut that rate. Just like we saw in the colonoscopy paper, we miss a third of polyps, but we can cut that down by half. Similarly, the error rate of cardiologists was 24%. It was reduced to 13%. Similar kind of result with really good p-value here. How did the cardiologists assess the use of this? They felt that their assessments of the patient were improved 57% of the time, and that it saved them time as well. So I gave you just some examples of using a large language model, different ones, and how it could improve the care of patients if a physician uses it. And this is happening a million times a day. It's just a matter of teaching. We want to teach students, residents, faculty how to do this in the most effective evidence-based way. So a little more about the second topic, which is ambient listening, which is, again, widely adopted throughout the nation. So, does it improve efficiency? Initially, they didn't see that, but as I show you additional studies, we'll start to see the value of ambient listening. So, this is a randomized trial here from New England Journal of Medicine AI called Ambient AI Scribes in Clinical Practice. What did it find? Again, this is a randomized trial. We found that it reduced burnout, which is really important. I know as you are mentoring and teaching the next generation, we're very concerned about their wellness. And by having a tool like this, it helps to reduce burnout, task load, work exhaustion. Mayo Clinic actually published a paper about this, that it reduces something called cognitive load, which you can measure using a Stanford scoring system. Some of these other studies use that same very precise scoring system to show the value or the benefit of ambient listening. This was from the University of Wisconsin. It's a randomized trial. Real world, what did they find? They found that the time that the doctor spent in the note was decreased by 21 minutes per day total, and that their after hours time, like when, let's say I see 8 hours worth of patients, although it's always more than that, and if I make it home eventually, and after I have a meal with my loved ones, doctors tend to put on their pajamas and get on the computer and spend hours trying to transcribe what happened during those encounters. But with ambient listening, that's already been put in now. So there's less time after hours at home spent on the computer. But this is the real value, which on the Stanford scale was reduced burnout, reduced work exhaustion, and this idea of interpersonal disengagement, like disengaging from patients or colleagues because of this overload on the documentation on the EMR, that got better. Coding and billing got better. So Ann and I were at the American College of Physicians conference just a few weeks ago in San Francisco, and we heard Lisa Rottenstein speak about her JAMA study, which came out April 28th, and this is the best trial to date on Ambien. And what did she ask and what did she find? She found that, well, first of all, she wanted to know how is adoption of these scribes doing with EHR time and visits. And she looked at 5 academic centers, and she found that it did decrease time. And the numbers that she demonstrated were far more profound in physicians that actually use it all the time. So in these prior studies that I showed you, the time savings was hard to really show. But if you do a subgroup analysis of those physicians that used it consistently, there was much more significant time savings. These things are already happening. I'm hoping to show you how to use them in a better way. And then in our conversations with your faculty here before this talk, we learned that you at the medical college here are using, for medical education, which I love, you're using or creating customized agents. Well, in a similar way, agents are being built and soon to be deployed for patient care. So I'll explain what that looks like specifically. So large language models, let's say you use them in patient care. They can write a note, they can summarize, they can answer your question about a patient's diagnosis or treatment. They can generate text, but you have to keep prompting it. The difference with an agent is that it can take actions, make plans, use tools, complete multi-step tasks, and you don't have to have ongoing prompting. Lab data, for example, can continuously be fed in, and it could take actions. It could read the chart, check the guidelines, draft recommendations, message the team, monitor new lab results with minimal prompting. So this is really the future of what's happening in AI in medicine. In the Lancet in February, they talked about the rise of agentic AI teammates. At our hospital, there's a tumor board each week that we attend. And in that room, for a complex patient with cancer, the pathologist comes, the radiologist comes, the primary care doctor is there, the oncologist is there. And they all meet in a room like this, and we present all the data, and all the different physicians kind of put their heads together on figuring out the best care plan for the patient. Well, in a similar way, you can build agents that are the primary care agent, the oncology agent, the radiology agent, the pathology agent, and those agents can interact with each other and improve the care plan for the patient. So that's kind of where the future is. And one paper that just came out May 8th actually did this on the inpatient side, which I'm excited about since we do inpatient medicine. And this is the Stanford group, John Chen. So what did they do? This is a single-arm prospective pilot study at one academic inpatient center. in 2025, but they built a custom agent. And this is a big deal in terms of medical practice. I know you guys are doing it in medical education, which I love, but this is super exciting that this is for patient care now. And so they used Gemini as their large language model. It drafted hospital summaries each day of the history, physical, progress notes, and emailed it to the physician each morning before they made their rounds. So this was an example of using an agent for workflow on hospital summaries. Importantly, there wasn't harm, and it reduced physician burnout. So this is just an example of how agents will be used in medicine. And these findings show that agentic large language models in the workflow can be integrated into clinical care. So we covered the CNNs, the large language models, ambient, the agents. So what do we take away from all of this? That CNNs, often referred to in terms of computer vision, can read and see things that the human eye can't see, whether it's an X-ray, a CT scan, an EKG, an image of the eye, a mammogram, a colonoscopy. And that we can use large language models to improve patient care, and that ambient listening is deployed throughout the US at hospital systems, improving burdens, and that the future in the coming years is AI agents. Now, this is a very formative time for medical students right now, and their first exposures to patient care are really about the humanism, the doctor-patient relationship. And I've talked to many people that are deans at medical schools, and they tell me, and I've witnessed this myself, that after they leave this campus, any campus, and they do their residency, they get exposed to these administrative things, the inbox, the metrics, the prior authorizations, the billing, the coding, the documentation, and all these things weigh heavily on that doctor-patient relationship that we work so hard in this environment to create the passion around that. This is why the students applied to come here. This is why they want to become a physician. And all these other factors kind of weigh upon them in such a way that beauty of the doctor-patient relationship gets lost. And so what we're starting to see is if we use these tools, the AI tools, to kind of lift the weight of all these burdens, that we can regain for all of us, whether those of us who have been in practice for a long time or even those that are about to finish here and start into practice. We can go back to the reason they applied to medical school to come here in the first place, which is they want to build a relationship, be able to listen to the patient, build empathy, build trust, and use their knowledge and judgment and their presence in the room to really profoundly affect the life of another human being. That everyone comes to the medical college here because they find deep meaning and purpose in doing this. So this is really a magical time since November of 2022, when large language models were released. It has become this exciting tool that we can use to solve all kinds of problems in medicine. I know you guys are building and expanding your research buildings here. We're working with students, residents, and professors all across the country to do research around how to use AI to improve patient care. And we hope we can be part of the journey with you guys in a future of AI-enabled precision medicine and prevention. And I'm just going to end on a quote from Winston Churchill that ties back to some of the beginning slides, which is, "With this greatness comes responsibility." So we host a 2-day conference at a large convention center in Chicago called McCormick Place. If you want to really go deep into all the different subspecialties that have to do with AI and medicine, including sessions on medical education, you're welcome to come to our conference. It's a Friday and Saturday, October 9th and 10th. If you don't have the ability to come live, the entire thing is virtual as well. If you want to collaborate on publications or research projects, you can email us, you can go to our website.
Hey everybody, John here. Thanks for listening to another episode. If you enjoyed what you heard here today, please check out our website at www.americancollegeaim.org. Sign up to become a member. Also, save the dates, October 9th and October 10th, 2026. We'll be back live in Chicago, Illinois at the McCormick Place Convention Center for our second annual live scientific session. Sign up at the website to attend. Until then, we'll see you all on the next Melvin Monday. Thanks for stopping by. See ya.